The inspiring calm of a black maid during 7 shocking robberies that transformed everything. The sun broke through the morning fog, bending rays of light through the grand kitchen windows of the Johnsons' home. Mary Jenkins, a 55-year-old maid, took a deep breath, inhaling the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. The Johnsons had trusted her for years, relying on her nurturing spirit like a second heartbeat in their upscale life. But that morning, a tremor of unease rippled through the air. Whispers of panic filled the neighborhood. A string of robberies had breached the delicate peace of this affluent enclave. Suddenly, Mary felt the chill of suspicion lurking like a shadow. Was she now seen as part of the problem? For years, she had poured her heart into these families, cooked their meals, raised their children, woven herself into the fabric of their lives. Yet now, their glance felt different, untrusting. Each furtive stare cut deeper than any theft. Mary's thoughts wrestled with the indignation of being doubted in a home that had once embraced her. She interpreted their whispered conversations, the sighs exchanged at the breakfast table, but couldn't shake the tightening knot in her chest. Could she still be the unwavering rock they needed as fear spread its tendrils through the pristine neighborhood? As days turned into nights, the tension only grew with each robbery. The elite families fortified their homes, not just with locks and security systems, but also with an unspoken animosity. The glorious evenings of laughter with her children in their small, worn-out house felt reminiscent of a life long forgotten. What did they know of resilience, of integrity? They built walls, both physical and emotional, while she stood on the other side, questioning her place. The pressure ceased to ebb, it intensified, until that fateful moment when she witnessed a shadowy figure darting away from a neighbor's house. Her heart raced, but she couldn't afford hesitation. Could her voice, once dismissed, now make a difference? The images of the suspect swirled in her mind, yet the weight of unaddressed prejudices bore down on her. How could she wield the knowledge of this close-knit community when they had just begun to see her as an outsider? Was it worth it to risk everything, the long years of devotion she had poured into their lives, by calling out the truth that threatened to upend the fragile trust between them? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. That night, Mary sat awake, piecing together memories. Names, clues, the threads of familiarity began to intertwine with a newfound resolve. As sleep eluded her, the whispers from earlier, those quiet, insidious doubts, grew louder, taunting her courage. The community meeting loomed ahead, a boiling cauldron of fear and accusation. How could she step into that fray when her heart was still tethered to the trust she had built? Yet, if she didn't, who would? As she prepared for the confrontation, the anguish settled in her stomach, a tight coil of worry intermingled with determination. What awaited her behind those double doors? Would she rise, revealing the truth? Or would anxiety tether her to silence, leaving her in the shadows of suspicion that now blurred the lines between servant and suspect? The answers turned over in her mind, and as she stood on the threshold, uncertainty clung to her like a second skin. The stakes were higher than ever. It was time to choose between stepping into the light or retreating forevermore. The meeting hall buzzed with muted conversations, a collective tension that wrapped around Mary like an unwanted cloak. As she entered, the eyes turned to her, some curious, some distrustful. The whispers diminished, replaced by an uncomfortable silence that prickled at her skin. She took a steadying breath, reminding herself of her purpose. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about the truth. Mary found a corner in the back, her gaze sweeping over the faces that had shifted from familiarity to skepticism. Each person wore their fear like armor, their previously kind expressions now hardened and scrutinizing. A part of her craved to retreat, to hide behind the familiar world of domesticity where she had built her life. But an unquenchable fire ignited within her, pushing her toward the dais that loomed ahead. A few minutes passed before the community leader stepped up, adjusting his glasses and clearing his throat. The conversation immediately morphed into accusations, fingers pointed at perceived culprits within their walls. An unsympathetic outsider, a lowly worker, whispers of betrayal. Mary's insides churned at the unfairness of their scorn. They didn't see the vulnerability of their accusations. They wielded them like weapons. As her heart raced, the memories of the times she had watched over their children, listened to their joys and sorrows, flooded her vision. She felt that knot tightening in her chest again, wrestling with the weight of unasked questions from the families she once nurtured. Could she find the courage to expose the truth she had discovered, the shadowy figure running from the scene of one of the break-ins? With each passing moment, she could feel the odds piling against her. Yet a seed of determination took root. She was not just the help, not merely a spectator to their privileged lives. She was part of the story, a vital knot in the fabric of this family's tapestry. As the leader's voice droned on, outlining measures to ramp up security and apprehend a non-existent threat, something within her snapped. Her hand shot up involuntarily, surprising even herself. Heads turned, whispers sparked anew, but this time there was an electric tension buzzing around her. "Excuse me!" The sound of her voice startled her, echoing in the charged atmosphere. "I saw something! A figure last night darting away from Mrs. Henderson's house right before the alarm went off. I think I know who it is!" A hush descended upon the room. Shock flooded their faces. Silence replaced the buzz of indignation. Fear blurred into disbelief, and Mary saw the flickers of judgment rise above the surface. Suddenly, in her chest, the knot transformed into something lighter, though still frightened, as if unearthing her truth had released her shackles. In their silence, she sensed an unexpected shift. Curiosity mingled with unease. "You think it was someone from the neighborhood?" someone whispered skeptically, and the doubt, hurtful as it was, still pushed her further. "No," Mary replied, her voice steadier this time. "I think it was someone who knows all of your households well, someone who can easily blend in, someone you trust." A clamor erupted, voices overlapping with worries and assertions. But underneath the chaos, Mary felt an unfamiliar weight lift. She was standing in her power, no longer merely a whisper among their thoughts, but a voice laden with a crucial message. As the meeting devolved, she felt her resolve harden. They needed to listen, to face a reality that she had long navigated, one where trust must be rebuilt, where fear would no longer dictate their lives. Mary's heart raced as she realized the implications of her words. The courage she displayed was a mere glimpse into the strength she had always possessed. The confrontation marked a turning point, not just for the community, but for herself too. With shadows still lurking around them, she could feel the stakes rising again. How would she prove her innocence and reclaim her place in their lives? Would her admission lead to greater convictions against her, or would it become a bridge toward understanding? The uncertainty loomed as heavily as the moment she had just seized. And as she left the hall that night, the questions echoed in her mind. Was this a beginning, or merely a prelude to another chapter of conflict? Mary stepped out of the meeting hall, her breath quickening in the crisp night air. The cacophony of voices faded into the background, replaced by the dim sounds of the neighborhood. Crickets chirping, distant laughter, the rustling of leaves. Each sound reminded her that even in her confrontation, life continued on outside the walls of that tense gathering. The coldness seeped into her bones, but there was an unfamiliar warmth blossoming within her, a flicker of empowerment. Had she truly made a difference? Yet uncertainty plagued her mind. Could she trust the people who had once welcomed her and now questioned her motives? How long would it take for them to peel back the layers of mistrust? Nothing in her daily routine had prepared her for this moment. She had always been a caregiver, a comforter, never a whistleblower. The roles were dizzyingly distinct, but she could no longer reconcile them. What did it mean to care for someone if she didn't call them out on their blind spots? Stepping onto her familiar street, she felt the tug of home amidst the swirling chaos in her mind. But home held its own secrets, its own judgments. The house seemed to hold its breath as she let herself in. Soft light pooled in the corners, and everything felt achingly normal. She moved through the quiet spaces, tracing her fingers along the dappled walls. The family photos, teddy bears, and the faint scent of old laundry all reminded her of the warmth she had cultivated there, a warmth that felt more fragile now. In the solitude of her kitchen, she prepared a simple dinner, attempting to suppress the thoughts of doubt thrumming through her veins. As she chopped vegetables, she wrestled with the implications of her revelation. The figure she had seen could easily be someone from their lives, someone who interacted with their families every day. She had stumbled onto a dangerous truth, one that turned friend into foe and shattered the comfort of routine. Each chop of the knife became a release, a way to temper the brewing storm inside her. Anger, fear, and resolve melded into something more potent, the drive to prepare herself for what lay ahead. She realized she needed to gather evidence. Her senses sharpened as she began crafting a plan, one that would provide undeniable proof. Cameras, witness accounts, corroboration to fortify her fragile credibility. Every step she took felt like a rebellion against the constraints of her past. Mary paused, her reflections punctuated by the clicking of the stove. Could she navigate the dangerous waters of betrayal and community pride? Each decision was layered with moral implications, and she felt the weight of those choices thrumming in her chest. The drive to unearth the truth pushed her forward like a current. This was not merely about solving a theft. It symbolized a greater transformation, a leap from subservience to agency, from invisibility to recognition. As she prepared to sit down with her modest meal, a thought sparked. Could this truly lead to a revolution unlike any she had ever imagined? She considered the skills she had developed along the way, the deep understanding of psychosocial dynamics she had cultivated as a caregiver. If she could connect with her colleagues not just on a personal level but as equals, an undeniable camaraderie could form. Mary recognized that every action mattered now. From this evening onward, she would navigate her world with heightened awareness. She would not only reveal the darkness lurking in familiar shadows, but also illuminate her own path, a journey where her voice mattered. As she savored her meal, a newfound determination washed over her. The space she had once believed confined was beginning to expand. Was it possible to confront the darkness without losing herself in it? As the question hung on the air, she felt a thrill of adrenaline coiling in her gut. The time was ripe for action. Her next meeting would be pivotal. In that moment of quiet resolve, Mary set her mind to a single thought. What if she could rebuild trust, not only among her neighbors, but more importantly, within herself? The spiral of uncertainty coursed through her, challenging her to become not just an observer of her life, but its architect. That challenge loomed large, and as she finished her meal, the depth of her next step filled her with an almost palpable anticipation. Would carving her own path illuminate the way for others too? The thought swirled through her. She was ready to face this complexity head-on. With the shadows giving way to a flicker of hope, a new dawn awaited her. The moment of truth beckoned, and she felt instinctively that it would change everything. As she prepared for bed, a single image crystallized in her mind, the figure darting away into the night. Someone she would have to confront. But who would it be? The familiar, trustworthy face among them? That question sat heavy on her chest, and sleep eluded her as she contemplated the forthcoming reckoning. The early morning light spilled through the kitchen window, painting the countertops with a soft golden hue. Mary stood at the sink, washing the dishes from her humble dinner. Her mind, however, was tangled in a web of unresolved questions and dark possibilities. The figure was still at the forefront of her thoughts. Who were they? Were they truly as close to her as she'd feared? The echo of their shadowy movement haunted her, urging her to push beyond familiar comforts. As she finished rinsing off the last plate, she felt the weight of her resolve solidifying. The vague outlines of her plan formed more distinctly. Today would not simply be about observation. No, today she would take the initiative, challenge her fears, and transform this nebulous dread into something actionable. After breakfast, she slid into a comfortable yet sharp outfit, a blend of professionalism and approachability. She needed to project confidence, especially when she met her colleagues. She took a moment in front of the mirror, practicing her expressions, serious, warm, determined. It felt almost foreign to her, this notion of stepping into the spotlight, but she needed to forge a new identity, even if only for today. Arriving at the community center, Mary inhaled deeply, letting the morning air fill her lungs, tinged with the scent of possibility. It was nerve-wracking to think of standing in front of the very people who had questioned her integrity. Would they see her for who she truly was, and not through the lens of suspicion? Each step towards the meeting room felt like a decision made in defiance of her insecurities. As the meeting commenced, she observed her colleagues. Muffled conversations and shifting papers surrounded her, yet deep within she felt a pull to voice her discoveries. The round table sat ominously, a reflection of vulnerability and strength. Mary's heart raced as she contemplated her next move. When her turn came, she cleared her throat, her voice trembling slightly at first. "I know recent events have caused a rift among us," she began, her eyes sweeping over the apprehensive faces. "But I believe we need to discuss not only what happened, but also how it impacts our community." The air felt thick with tension. As the murmurs faded, Mary continued, her confidence blossoming with each sentence. She shared her observations, weaving in the threads of her experience as a caregiver, how people trusted her and confided in her. She emphasized the importance of open communication, not just for the sake of safety, but also for rebuilding trust. But as her words flowed, she couldn't ignore the internal conflict surging beneath. It was one thing to present facts, it was another to get personal. Her revelation hung in the air, heavy and charged. Would they understand her position without misconstruing it? Would they see beyond the caregiver to the advocate she aspired to be? The room fell silent after she spoke. The silence screamed louder than any voice could, pressing down as if waiting for her next move. Gathering her courage, she allowed herself to speak of her own fears, the feeling of betrayal, the lurking shadow of distrust. Eyes widened, and for a moment, vulnerability hovered visibly among her audience. Just then, Greg, one of her longtime colleagues, broke the silence. "Mary, what do you suggest we do?" His question was pointed, leaving no escape for a simple answer. Mary felt the weight of expectation settle upon her like an unyielding force. Before she could respond, her mind raced with potential strategies. "I think we need to set up a task force," she blurted, heart pounding. "A group focused solely on monitoring our community and enhancing security." The very idea sent a ripple of excitement through her. It was a chance to rise together, to carve a space for change. As conversations whirled among the group, Mary felt the chaos shift. Responses came rushing in, some supportive, others doubtful. Each reply nudged her further into a pool of emotional complexity, where hope battled fear. Could she lead this change? As the discussion raged on, Mary felt herself stepping into a role she had long avoided. There was power in the notion of leading, even if fraught with risks. Her resolve ignited in the face of upheaval, casting away lingering shadows of doubt. However, a nagging voice surfaced within her, a reminder of the possible repercussions. If she led this task force, how could she ensure it wouldn't further fractal their already fragile trust? In that moment, she realized the stakes had escalated beyond her initial intentions. The meeting concluded with a tentative agreement among members to form the task force, but the air was still thick with unspoken suspicions. As she stepped outside, a wave of anxiety poured over her. Was this truly the path to healing? And then, a chilling thought crossed her mind, a thought that brought back the image of the figure darting away into the night. Was it a gamble she was ready to take? Could this role of leadership bring risks that might plunge her deeper into a web of deceit? Her determination surged, but so did her fear. The path ahead felt treacherous, filled with hidden dangers lurking beneath the call of camaraderie. Mary resolved to confront not only her community's challenges, but also the phantoms of her choices. The moment of truth awaited, and as she peered into the uncertain future, she felt a powerful question crystallize. What type of leader would she become when faced with the darkest of truths? The hum of the city was a distant chorus as Mary stepped away from the community center, her mind racing with the weight of her new responsibilities. Each footfall echoed a mixture of determination and dread. Leading the task force would not only require her to navigate the expectations of her peers, but also to scrutinize her own motives and capabilities. As she made her way home, the threatening image of the figure loomed larger than before. Was it mere coincidence that her proactive stance coincided with their shadowy presence? Despite the distraction, she focused on how she could transform uncertainty into a foundation for her leadership. Each decision needed to assert her commitment to the community's safety while mending fragile bonds with her colleagues. Her first action upon entering her home was to clear her workspace, shedding remnants of comfort that had cocooned her for too long. Piles of unorganized paperwork and a dusty desk reflected not just her physical environment, but also her mental state, cluttered and disoriented. Methodically, she sorted through files, redistributing essentials that brought her focus into sharper relief. With every paper processed, she began to uncover a sense of urgency that had been masked by her previous hesitations. Mary then sat down and opened her laptop. It was time to plan the first meeting with the newly formed task force. She drafted a comprehensive agenda, goals, strategies, and discussion points that would allow each member to contribute ideas. Her mind churned with possibilities, identifying weaknesses within their community and proposing methods to tighten their defenses. Yet, the shadow of her shaken trust weighed heavily in her thoughts. Would those she approached be as eager to collaborate as she was? In the past few weeks, trust had been compromised as doubts emerged from hidden corners. She realized that any semblance of leadership would require her to confront her vulnerability directly. She could no longer afford to avoid truths that could tear apart the very fabric of their collective harmony. But just as Mary began to feel grounded in her actions, a text message lit up her phone screen, drawing her attention from her carefully written notes. It was from Claire, a close acquaintance and confidant from work, urging her to meet. Curiosity piqued, and, fueled by an instinctual need for guidance, she responded affirmatively, driven by the knowledge that support could be pivotal in her tumultuous journey. As the hours ticked by in anticipation of her meeting with Claire, Mary busied herself by researching security strategies and community engagement models online. Her reliance on fact-based knowledge would shift her standing from instinct-driven caregiver to respective leader. The more she read, the more resolve permeated her being. It became clear that this was a pivotal moment in her evolution. That evening, as she entered the cafe to meet Claire, a sudden chill swept through her. The conversations buzzing like static seemed eerily disconnected from her purpose. Taking a deep breath, she approached her friend, who was waiting with an expectant smile that quickly transformed into concern. "Mary, you look intense," Claire remarked, gauging the urgency that hung around her. After a moment, Mary shared her thoughts on the task force and her fears about leading it. The words tumbled out, a release of pent-up anxiety that had become too burdensome to contain. Claire listened attentively, nodding thoughtfully. "But Mary, you know you can't carry all this on your own, right? You have to lean on others, too." The reminder spoke to Mary's burgeoning realization. Her strength lay not in solitary determination, but in fostering connections and building alliances. As their conversation developed, Mary's mind swirled with hope that was buoyed by clarity. This was the first step not only in addressing the external threats, but also in challenging her own internal fears. Claire's insight about the importance of teamwork became a pivotal revelation. The path she envisioned had to include collaborative strength. Without it, she risked straying into isolation. Determined to initiate this collective effort, Mary concluded their meeting with a new spark of inspiration. Perhaps, through her quest to understand her potential as a leader, she could also unearth pathways that would create genuine partnerships. As she prepared to leave the cafe, a fateful encounter awaited. The uncertainty of the lurking figure crept back into her mind, unnervingly intertwining with her newfound resolve. What would it take to face both her fears and the looming threats to her community? Mary stepped into the night, a spark of determination ignited within her. The answer remained dauntingly beyond her reach, challenging her to unearth not just her leadership skills, but to confront the reality of the threats before her. Would she be able to unmask the hidden figure behind the shadows, or would she fall into the very trap that confidence had begun to unravel? As Mary walked away from the cafe, the chill of the evening air forced her to wrap her arms around herself, a reflex against the biting wind that mirrored her uneasiness. Her thoughts raced, oscillating between the urgency to galvanize her task force and the instinctual need to protect those she now felt responsible for. Each step felt as though it carried the weight of her fears, a prelude to the moment she would have to confront the unknown figure haunting her thoughts. In the quiet of her home, Mary's determination began to crystallize. She sat at her reorganized desk, a battleground of ideas strewn about. Notes from her research, a fresh agenda for the task force meeting, and a calendar marked with deadlines. This time it was different. Each item represented not just tasks, but an opportunity to reclaim her narrative and channel her anxieties into actionable strategies. The night loomed heavy with her thoughts. The looming shadow embedded in her mind demanded her attention. Were her fears merely phantoms of her imagination, or was there a real threat? The cerebral back and forth began to take form. Images of her colleagues emerged. Were they counting on her to provide a roadmap through the uncertainty? Was it possible to lead while battling her own doubts? Compelled by this internal dialogue, Mary opened her laptop again and began drafting personal reflections. What were her motivations for taking this lead? It wasn't just the position or prestige. It was about regaining a sense of agency amidst chaos. This realization flipped a switch in her, illuminating the path ahead. Every self-doubt transformed slowly into a counterforce. The compulsion to learn and adapt overshadowed the inertia of fear. Those thoughts propelled Mary toward a new phase, role-playing the meeting. With disparity in her focus, she envisioned each member of the task force, crafting responses in her mind. How would she respond to concerns? What if someone regretted their involvement? Serving the role of both leader and listener, she anticipated resistance, but was equally prepared with solutions. This exercise not only highlighted her deep-seated fears, but also her capacity for growth. With a clear vision of her approach, she shifted to the tactical side. She began to create essential tasks that would instill a sense of purpose among team members. Assigning them into smaller groups with specific objectives could culminate in fostering collaboration. She envisioned strength born not from individual efforts, but from a mosaic of contributions, each member lending their unique expertise. As thoughts solidified into plans, she felt an unexpected surge of confidence. Each task felt less daunting as clarity engulfed her worries. Yet amid this burgeoning empowerment, unease still accompanied her, a phantom lurking just beyond the light of her newfound resolve. The hours slipped by unnoticed until fatigue settled into her bones, the mental workout leaving her spent but emboldened. She closed her laptop and headed toward the window below. Her mind flickered back to Claire's earlier reminder: lean on others. Did she truly grasp the essence of that support? In her quest to organize the chaos, she had overlooked the strength gained through transparency. Could she be vulnerable enough to share her concerns with her team? The idea was frightening and exhilarating all at once. It was one thing to lead from a position of authority, and quite another to lead from authenticity, even if that meant risking her own image. In that moment of reflection, she suddenly noticed a figure across the street, shrouded in darkness but unmistakably present. A chill rushed down her spine, instinct screaming to alert her senses. There it was again, the figure that had made its unwelcome presence felt in her psyche. A pulse of adrenaline coursed through her. Mary wondered if her new role could redefine this confrontation. The time for passive observation was over. It was time to act, to face the unknown, both outside her window and within herself. What awaited her in the next hours could very well define her, not just as a leader, but as a person ready to confront the shadows within and beyond. As her heart raced, she realized the answer could hold far more than just clarity. It could be the catalyst for profound transformation. Would she seize the moment or step back into the safety of the past? The resolve to stand up against both internal and external fears gathered force, but the path ahead remained shrouded in unknowns. The next morning dawned with a muted light filtering through Mary's bedroom curtains, an indication of the day ahead. The weight of the previous night hung in the air, and she could feel the ghost of doubt linger, grappling with her newfound resolve. Rising to face her reflection, Mary found it was not merely the face of a professional. It was a woman shedding layers of apprehension. Each intentional movement toward her morning routine was a declaration of commitment, a step toward confronting the demons that had haunted her both personally and professionally. After a shower, she dressed deliberately, no more hiding behind the shields of muted tones and conservative cuts. Today, she reached for a bold, vibrant blouse that matched her emerging spirit. As she fastened the last button, a thought passed through her. Leadership required her to step into the spotlight, not shy away from it. Arriving at the office, Mary's heart thrummed in her chest, the anticipation of the task force meeting wrapping around her like a double-edged sword. Different scenarios danced in her mind. What if they doubted her? What if they dismissed her concerns? But together with those fears bloomed a fierce determination. To be transparent and bring her authentic self into the space would forge a deeper bond with her team. She entered the conference room early, setting the stage with strategic precision. Each post-it note, each agenda item represented a deliberate choice, not just in terms of task delegation, but also as a manifestation of vulnerability embedded within her leadership philosophy. This was to be a gathering of more than just ideas. It was a chance to breed resilience through community and shared ambition. When the team settled into their chairs, faces illuminated by the soft glow of the projector screen, Mary felt a momentary pang of uncertainty. Yet it was quickly dispelled by the thought of inviting her team into her reality. Taking a deep breath, she began. This is an important meeting for us, not just in terms of our agenda, but in how we acknowledge the challenges we face, both collectively and individually. As discussions unfolded, Mary drew upon each colleague's insights, weaving their concerns with her own while making room for the unease that had been introduced by their shared adversary, the unknown figure lingering in the back of her mind. Exchanging fears became a source of strength. It was no longer her solitude against the shadows, but rather a united front equipped with diverse perspectives and talents. When one of her team members, Jason, shared his anxiety regarding the looming deadlines, Mary seized the opportunity. "I share that feeling, Jason. I've been wrestling with the same anxieties. Let's talk about what we can do together to alleviate that pressure." Her candidness shifted the energy in the room. Others began to voice their own apprehensions, leading to tangible discussions about strategies and methods to navigate the tides of uncertainty. In those moments, marked by genuine connection, Mary discovered not just the capabilities of her team, but her ability to foster a safe environment for growth. Midway through the session, she glanced outside. The sun had broken free from the clouds, casting brightness against the glass of the building, a stark contrast to the lingering darkness she had feared. Yet it was then she noticed something outside, a flash of movement. The same figure from the window the previous night loomed at the edge of her vision. Fear jolted through her, but it morphed into clarity. This was not just about confronting her internal uncertainties, it was about defining the boundaries she was willing to protect. Fueled by this revelation, Mary rallied the meeting, emphasizing collective action while preparing herself for whatever challenge awaited her beyond the walls of this room. As the meeting wrapped up and thank yous circulated, her heart raced with a simultaneous blend of triumph and trepidation. She had opened a door in the hearts of her colleagues, but would it remain open when they faced their shadows outside of this safe space? The deeper question lingered. Could she hold firm against both external threats and internal disquiet, or would she falter when it counted most? Gathering her notes, Mary steeled her resolve to confront the figure across the street and the tumult within her. There was work to be done, and the deeper she delved into both realms, the more she sensed her genuine evolution as a leader was just beginning. What awaited her if she dared to take that first step? Mary paused for a moment, her heart thumping as she caught sight of the figure still lingering across the street. Clenching her notes tightly, she stepped towards the exit. Her strides were intentional. She felt the fabric of her blouse brush against her skin, a reminder of the colors and boldness she had chosen to embody today. The time had come to define not just her role, but her very self, untangling the threads of fear and fundamentally reshaping her approach to leadership. She crossed the threshold into the bustling street, her senses heightened, acutely aware of everything around her. The sunlight poured down, illuminating faces hurrying to their destinations, each person a story she had yet to hear. They represented opportunities, not threats. That realization carried her forward, a protective shield against her anxieties. Moving to a nearby cafe, she settled at a table that afforded her a clear view of the figure. The day was now more than just a meeting. It was a confrontation with the part of herself that could no longer remain at the fringes. As she sat there surveying the scene, memories of past failures washed over her. Moments when her voice had faltered, ideas had been dismissed, and the weight of expectation had crept into her heart like a thief in the night. Yet these memories served a dual purpose. They fueled her resolve as much as they haunted her. Gazing back at the figure who seemed oblivious to her scrutiny, she noted the subtle movements, the way it shifted, the way shadows clung to it. Mary felt the pang of familiarity. Was it fear? Resentment? No, it was something deeper. It was a reflection of her own struggles. This person was not just a figure of intimidation, but a manifestation of her fractured self, the self that doubted, the self that hesitated. Tension welled inside her. The urge to flee battled against an emerging courage she barely recognized. Deciding to confront this metaphorical specter, she pulled out her phone. The task force meeting had invigorated her. It had shown her the necessity of connection and vulnerability. What if she reached out to this unknown threat? Instead of allowing fear to dictate her movements, could she engage? As she scrolled through her contacts, her mind flooded with names, mentors, allies, and even a few adversaries. Each one represented a different aspect of her leadership journey. But instead of calling, she texted, "I want to connect. Let's meet. There's so much to discuss."
an act of defiance against the encroaching darkness, though not without its risks. She pressed send, a wave of adrenaline radiating through her as she realized the vulnerability of that simple gesture. Her heart raced in anticipation. What might come next? Would they join her in confronting the unspoken fears that lurked in each shared glance and silence? Or would they simply ignore her? Mary felt a burgeoning strength. In her decision to connect, she shifted from being a passive player in her professional life to an active architect of her reality. A sense of calm washed over her. It was as if she'd whispered to that anxious part of herself to quiet down just for a moment. But as that moment settled within her, a flash from the corner of her eye interrupted her thoughts. The figure was moving towards her, crossing the street with a purposeful stride. Panic flared, but she steeled herself. Her resolve was now unbreakable. She would face whatever.
Challenge awaited her. It was her time to dismantle not only the figure that had haunted her, but also the self-doubt that had chained her. As the figure approached, she realized her next challenge was not just external. It was about revealing the layers of her own strength and leading not only with authority, but with authenticity. The time had come to embrace her truth, and it felt like the very foundation of her leadership was about to be built. Would this moment become the crescendo of her journey or the precursor to new struggles? Her next step would define everything. Mary's breath caught in her throat. The figure was closer now, an embodiment of her fear and resistance. Every stride it took felt magnified in her mind, a tangible representation of the challenge she was prepared to confront. She braced herself, pushing the anxiety to the far corners of her consciousness. What had she been hiding from? Was it the judgment of others, or was it the judgment of herself that held the most weight? As the figure came within arm's reach, her palms grew slick against the table. They made eye contact. A split second transformed into a brief eternity. It was a man, tall and imposing, his expression inscrutable. There was an undeniable tension in the air, a charged moment where both their futures hung in the balance. "Mary?" he asked, cutting through the silence more softly than she had anticipated. It was a voice she hadn't heard in years, one that cracked open an archive of memories and emotions. "James," she managed, her own name now feeling foreign as it slipped from her lips. They had been colleagues once, allies, during a project where she had felt a flicker of belonging. But that relationship had been drowned out by the chaos that accompanied her rise: office politics, misunderstandings, self-doubt. "What are you doing here?" he probed, curiosity sparking the vulnerability in his tone. It wasn't accusatory. It held a hint of nostalgia mixed with concern. And for a moment, it disarmed her. "I wanted to connect," Mary replied, stumbling over her words yet resolute. "I've been reflecting on how we used to support each other. I thought, maybe it was time we actually talked again." James studied her, his brow furrowing, almost as if he were weighing the truth of her intentions against past grievances. The silence stretched painfully, but Mary maintained eye contact, refusing to let her gaze falter. She was here to claim her narrative, and that required a foundation built on honesty. "I thought you'd forgotten about me," he finally said, his voice lower, laced with a hint of disappointment. "You've moved on. I get it. That's how this works." At that moment, Mary felt the walls she had so carefully constructed begin to crack. "I didn't forget you. I created distance because I needed to redefine my path." Each word felt liberating, wiping away a layer of self-imposed isolation as she spoke. "But that distance doesn't mean I didn't value what we had." His expression softened, the remembrance of shared struggles evident in the lines of his face. The once intimidating figure had transformed into a fellow traveler on this arduous road of self-discovery. A connection reignited. She sensed the shift within herself, the increasing recognition of collaboration over competition. "I was scared to reach out to you too," James admitted, his honesty surprising her. "We were both tangled in that toxic environment. It was easier to stay away." "Easier, but not better," Mary affirmed, embracing the new understanding that thrummed between them. We allowed fear to dictate our paths. It's about time we took a stand. The tide of vulnerability washed over her, and she realized that this exchange was a pivotal starting point. She could actively reshape her professional landscape by reclaiming lost relationships and setting aside her self-imposed barriers. "Let's build our own circle," she proposed, a momentum igniting within, one that fosters honesty and empowerment rather than fear. As James nodded, a spark of camaraderie lit their shared history anew. With each word, Mary felt a profound sense of direction crystallizing for her future leadership ambitions. This was not merely a reunion, it was a reconstitution of her resolve. But as clarity dawned upon her, the weight of external judgments loomed ominously. How would her newfound courage stand against the entrenched narratives about her leadership? An itch of uncertainty scratched at her confidence, but she fought to remain focused. "Let's not let our past keep us from a better future," she whispered, the urgency of transformation coursing through her veins. They would strategize, plan, and connect, no longer individuals in isolation, but allies ready to confront the core of their combined challenges. But as they began to discuss next steps, another figure brushed past the cafe window, a symbol of yet another external challenge waiting at the threshold, ready to test their commitment to growth. Would this be a pivotal chapter in her journey, or would it precipitate more unvoiced struggles? Mary felt the weight of anticipation build within her as the conversation shifted, determined to confront whatever was coming next. The busy hum of the cafe faded into the background as Mary felt the urgency of her mission settle into her bones. The moment of rekindling her connection with James had ignited something within her, a flicker of empowerment that threatened to turn into a flame. She realized that her fight transcended personal encounters. It was about creating a resilient network capable of facing their fears together. As she and James crafted a vision for their new circle, detailed conversations flowed about past vulnerabilities and shared struggles. He spoke of his experiences, moments where he too had melted into the shadows, choosing self-preservation over connection. This resonated deeply within Mary, echoing her own turbulent journey. With newfound resolve, they began sketching out a plan to gather their former colleagues, those who once believed in mutual support, drawing them together in a united front against
a common existential threat. "Let's center this around open dialogues," Mary suggested, her voice firm. "We can create an environment where we challenge outcomes collectively instead of allowing unfounded suspicions to divide us. Each meeting will prioritize sharing and vulnerability." James nodded in agreement, enthusiasm lighting up his features. Mary felt an electrifying sense of purpose blossom as she detailed her vision. Bi-weekly gatherings, workshops to educate one another about their unique competencies, and even community engagement initiatives to foster trust beyond their immediate network. Yet, as her plans took shape, the initial thrill was soon undercut by the re-emergence of her original fear, the presence of the shadowy figure. What if we still cannot figure out who's behind these robberies? What will happen if the community doesn't trust us? She leaned forward, caught in the gravity of these unanswered questions. James shook his head reassuringly. "We tackle that together. Transparency is key. If we place our trust in one another, people will sense that unity. We need to lead by example." His words ignited a further wave of conviction within her. If they spearheaded a consciousness of interconnected responsibility, could they simultaneously extinguish the fuel of mistrust surrounding her? She wondered if they might just shine light on the shadowy figure that haunted them all. As Mary stood to leave, her heart raced with a palpable excitement tempered by anticipation. The very act of taking control felt monumental. "We can't wait any longer. Let's announce this circle today," she declared, her voice brave and resolute. In agreement, they left the cafe, walking side by side into the crisp air. The streets, once filled with confusion and doubt, now promised a new chapter of collaboration and innovation. Yet, as they turned the corner, Mary caught the figure's eye, a fleeting glimpse through the nearby alley. Her pulse quickened. "James, that man from the cafe, there he is, the figure from our neighborhood." Without hesitation, Mary took a breath, then turned to James. We need to confront this. He's always lurking, and if we want to build a safe community, we must turn towards our fears, not away from them. With her heart pounding, Mary led the charge towards the alley, propelled by a mixture of adrenaline and resolve. However, uncertainty swirled in her mind. Could she handle this confrontation? Their demeanor changed once they reached the alley's entrance. The figure was no longer just a faceless threat. He was a living, breathing person. "Excuse me," Mary called out, her voice steady but laced with the challenge that coursed through her veins. The figure turned, surprise mingling with suspicion as he processed her words. "Are you aware of the fear you've instilled in our neighborhood?" she demanded, her voice unwavering. "People are scared, and it's affecting how we trust one another." The man, mid-30s with scruffy hair, appeared taken aback. "I don't know what you're talking about," he snapped defensively. Mary pressed on. "I saw you the other night, near Mrs. Henderson's house. You need to tell me your side of the story, because we can't move forward in accusation and suspicion." James positioned himself beside her, showing solidarity, and the figure's shoulders began to relax slightly. "I was just looking for my dog. He ran off, but I've returned him." His confession altered the tension in the air, but Mary could still sense the gulf of mistrust hovering between them. "Then join us," she proposed. "Don't you want to help rebuild what's been lost? We're forming a group, an alliance for protection. You can be part of it." The man shifted, vulnerability flickering across his features. "I never wanted to cause trouble. I've felt ignored, too." In that moment, Mary realized that their confrontation wasn't just about holding someone accountable. It was an opportunity for understanding, a bridge over the chasm of distrust. "Then let's talk," Mary affirmed, her heart filled with a sense of purpose she had not yet fully embraced. "Come to our first meeting. Help us transform this community together." The figure seemed to contemplate her proposal, his face softening visibly. "Maybe I will," he finally muttered, the weight of his uncertainty easing under a glimmer of hope. As Mary walked away, a surge of triumph unfurled within her. She had confronted a fear head-on and replanted the seeds of connection even where misunderstandings had taken root. "Then let's talk," Mary affirmed, her heart filled with a sense of purpose she had not yet fully embraced. "Come to our first meeting. Help us transform this community together." The figure seemed to contemplate her proposal, his face softening visibly. "Maybe," he finally muttered, the weight of his uncertainty easing under a glimmer of hope. As Mary walked away, a surge of triumph unfurled within her. She had confronted a fear head-on and replanted the seeds of connection even where misunderstandings had taken root. Now, with James by her side, they moved forward, despite uncharted waters still laid out before them. The task force awaited, and social transformation was burgeoning, each step closer to a community that thrived on cooperation rather than fear. As they returned to the expansive daylight of the street, Mary embraced the profound realization. Real leadership transcended holding authority. It thrived on empathy, connection, and an unwavering resolve to navigate through challenges, both internal and external. She felt that this moment marked the dawn of her transformation, and as she looked into the distance, she envisioned not just a new beginning for herself, but a reimagined future for her entire community, a place defined not by suspicion, but by trust and shared purpose. Now was the time when everything she had fought for materialized into something tangible and meaningful. Encouraged by this realization, she was ready to propel herself into her new leadership, not just as a caretaker or a maid, but as a true champion for change. She was on the brink of conquering her fears, achieving the respect of not only her neighbors, but herself. Today would be a testament to the strength she had harnessed amidst the storm, a strength that radiated from the core of her soul. With each step she took next, Mary was confident in her newfound ability to lead with integrity and empathy. firmly in control of her narrative, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead as she embarked on this exhilarating chapter of her life. This was only the beginning. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm.
Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.